Alright, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we're looking at a 27 Gambit. We are Tyrannical, Bolstering, and Explosives. That's the big one. And I didn't start my video with enough time for an intro, so we're going here. And that is a flash of my talents. One of the biggest game changers right now I feel like is binding heals. It's like a free atonement. But going into Explosive Week, I had to just come up with a solution, and thankfully KUI was updated, so I don't have to use Plater anymore. I didn't really want to or like it. But a feature KUI has had for a long time is this target helper. It's like an accompanying add-on you have to download, but it was everything I needed. Mainly, I wanted my orbs to, I wanted their nameplate to be a different color, and this little add-on lets you do that. So I've also utilized it to, I used to have a weak aura that would glow all of my schism targets. I felt like that feature is best used very sparingly, and this is just a little bit better of a way to do it. So I've just typed in all those names here. It took me like 5 minutes. But what that does, I'm not changing their color, so they're the same red of an enemy, but they're all going to be full opacity, where the minor mobs are lesser opacity. And then it also has this feature here for auras. I had to edit that a little bit in the code, but I thought changing colors would be a great way to track the soul glow spectrometer. Here's a little example. So it turns blue with the spectrometer. My target is highlighted and full opacity, where everyone else is less opacity. And that's about it. So I was kind of forced to try and use Plater because KUI was down. So happy KUI is back. And I wish I found this years sooner. But yeah, we're going to be changing the color of our orbs. We're leaving a little bit of a glow on them, and I think it's the best way to do it. Okay, so here we go. Starting out, we choose Haste. We're going right, and this is a Hail Mary. Lead with Fade, and you've got to get Atonements out and Explosives. I gotta get PI out too. There we are on the Mage, getting Explosives, and I'm trying to work up to Boon. Here we go. Radiance at the top to be extra defensive, and with PI we get Blast Nova, Blast Nova, Blast Nova. Divine Star is a great spell to press after Boon, and Mage down, that's sad. But you'll see my orbs glow white. I think it is just the best way to manage them. And they will always pop up on your screen full opacity, where other things are lesser. I just think it's a really nice way to track them. And I think the best way to deal with explosives too is very situationally. Sometimes I use a mouse over macro, sometimes I target them by clicking, and sometimes I tab to them, so it's just like a mixture of all those. Don't really have much here. Holy Nova is our new AoE spell. I kind of like that, but it is forcing us in melee a little bit more, which is always dangerous. Really got to know where your incoming damage is coming from. So I have my Shrouded mobs shaded purple to stand out. They are never a bad focus target. And here we have a Schism Boon. The first global is a Nova. Work in a Radiance to be defensive, favoring Nova, landing as many globals as possible to get as many stacks as possible. Catching all my orbs real quick. Always use Penance to spread your dots. And I'm noticing at this point I've still not used my Shadow Fiend, so that's like one tick against me. You definitely want to have used Shadow Fiend by now. First pull isn't a bad one. And with Divine Star, pretty much just want to run that thing on cooldown. I won't use that global in a Schism. I usually cast it as my true opener before Schism. So going into next pull, I'm scanning my buffs. We got everything. Renew is our new shield, our atonement applier. And there is our first Shadow Fiend and Schism. And you'll notice the stronger mobs at full opacity. Getting those explosives, getting some atonements out. PI the Mage, Schism, Boon. And it looks like I was favoring Novas there for the count, but we definitely needed the healing, so I wove in some blasts as well. And I had no dots out at this point, so I went ahead and barriered just so I could refresh dots. And I was jumped on, so that barrier might have saved my life. Penance to spread a dot. And I'm just, I'm like so proud of my nameplates right now. It's like, I wish I had learned that years ago, because I don't think it's like a new thing. But so happy KUI's back. I've actually been talking to the author, so I'm giving him some notes, and he's helping me with a couple changes. So I'm targeting the healthiest guy here. Open with Star, Schism, Boon. First global is a Nova. Heavily favoring Nova here for the stacks. Working a Radiance and a couple of Blasts to recover. And on the back side of Boon, always want to cast Star. Go straight into some dots. Radiance for the atonements. Spread a dot with Penance. And just pump. And I've probably not been the best with mind games, but sometimes I cast it before Boon, so I Schism mind games Boon, but the eruption doesn't always, I don't know, it's very situational, but I do like to work in mind games sometimes before Boon. And that death maybe could have been avoidable, but I was jumped on by a bolstered guy. And right when I get back, I go ahead and PI the Mage and Schism Boon. We weren't in any real danger at that point. However, we have enough time to get one more round of spells before boss. So I don't like holding PI. And now where we don't have Omni CD, I kind of just rely on using PI like where I think the group needs it, or possibly where I could use it. And this is a really pro combo right here. I led with Fade, and it got me all the way to the door before I had to use my Invis pot. And I had pre-laid out a feather for myself, which won't break Invis. So yeah, I didn't even use my potion until I was at the doorway. And Fade is kind of just like an Invis extender, if you will. And those guys released. Oh, like I feel like I probably could have battle res them. I'm sorry, mass res them. But they released. Yeah, anyway, with KUI, explosives are white, full opacity. I think that's super useful to see them. And that is the only nameplate I left a glow on as well. So in the spirit of using it sparingly, I think explosives is a good one to highlight. Grip for the tank. Fade so I can approach those guys. Lay a feather for my ally. Fortitude. Atonement. Shrouded. And I go ahead and Schism mind games and start pumping into this guy. Maybe I should have put that on the boss, but whatever. And I have PI, but I'm waiting for the ads. think that's a better place to use PI. And this is a double cooldown, so I Shadow Fiend, Schism, Boon, and PI is out on the Mage. And I was targeted with that mechanic, but I was in a PI boon, so I mean I wasn't going to leave melee. And yeah, that was a very aggressive boon. In hindsight, if I had worked in a Radiant somewhere, it would have really helped my allies there because they were all missing health. But we killed the Shrouded, and that was the region we needed, so it worked out. And on the outside of that phase, always Schism, Mind Games, and just pump. It's a nice window where you can get a lot of smites in. And with Divine Star, I'm noticing it's very mana expensive, so I'm not using it too often on single target. Fade when those guys come out. Dotted them manually. I could have waited until they came in and just penanced. I don't know why I did that. And in that Schism window, you want to just pump as much as possible. And a little bit safer play with those blasts. I try to at least shield myself and atone to other people. I can monitor the shields and atone someone without a shield. That Lenience talent is really nice. But here we are again, another boon with that mechanic. Maybe a little bit selfish because I put it in melee. Rogue died. I think if you replay it though, it was a missed kick. I'm not really sure if I did damage to him, but I also didn't even cast a Radiance. So those were two aggressive boons where people died, so... Okay, PI on the Monk. Schism is out, just pumping as much DPS as possible. Reserving Star for the ads. That was a really nice shield I had on myself. It's just a guessing game, but it's never nice to be caught without a shield. Star when they're stacked. Penance to spread the dot. Getting a couple of atonements out. Schism, Mind Games. We get a double death? No, double death. Yeah, we had a lot of damage there. I think it was a couple missed kicks. Body and Soul. Get my dots out. I saw that cast, so I Fear Bombed. Divine Star while they're stacked. And thankfully I had a shield up. I was blasted. And the Mage died from a missed kick. I know that for sure. I watched this already. And it's never a bad idea to throw Schism before this phase. Even if some value is lost, you'll have it back. And we're saving battle res. This guy is just about dead. And in hindsight, I possibly could have used Shadow Fiend on the other side of that interim, but I was holding for the next pack. Playing it here probably would have been better, like 2 schisms ago. But anyway, going into this next pack, it is pretty large. We have all cooldowns. There's no frontals, which is great, no cleaves, but we do have a lot of effects we have to dodge. Mind Tooth. I fade, paints up, and in that 8 seconds of paints up, I'm just focusing on dots. PI is out to our Monk, and this is double cooldown. Shadow Fiend, Schism, Boon, and with PI, you get Blast Nova, Blast Nova, Blast Nova. And I do work in a Radiance that time just because I wanted to do my job, you know, keep people alive. Refreshing dots. Always using penance to spread a dot. Ouch. Yeah, I was getting into my first Holy Nova rotation here. I'd run out of all my other spells. And yeah, double mechanics there, got slept. But thankfully I wasn't swarmed on. Got in a couple Holy Novas there finally. Feels good. And yeah, those explosives, I don't know if you agree or not as the viewer, but I think they're just so much easier to see when they're white versus like all the red enemies. And especially with that glow when they're at full opacity, they just don't get lost in the shuffle, you know what I mean? You can just easily get them. So also in hindsight, I wish I had played this a little bit differently, but targeting the blue guy, because that's our spectrometer. Whoops, I just shifted. But I went ahead and schismed, booned. Blast, Nova, Nova, blast. So I fade just because I want to use this real estate over here freely. But yeah, all I wish was different is I held boon, because we're going into a double. It would have felt a lot nicer with boon over here, but we have to do without. Barrier, just to get my dots out. If you have penance, use it. It'll spread your dot. It's always a nice opener to dot, then penance, and then just fill in the rest. Using binding heals there to atone myself. Divine Star. Schism Penance. Holy Nova. Just watching out for ground damage. Getting a couple explosives. Refresh dot. Spread dot. And boon did come available mid-pull. But I'm reserving at this point for Tyrannical boss. I really like this dragon. I think it's pretty fun, and this is a good example. I don't think we had any deaths. I think we played it pretty well. Mindsuit the dragon. So with Lust, we're going to double cooldown. Shadow Fiend, Schism, Boom. Blast Nova, Blast Nova, Blast Nova. And PI is on the Monk. And just unload. And for that one, I should have worked in Mind Games before Boon, but I didn't. So Schism, Mind Games, Boon. But sometimes I feel just getting into Boon one spell sooner is very valuable. So I do miss having Punt. I feel quite naked without it. I don't know why they took that from our book. But in a moment like that, the dot had fallen off of Hooktail. My dot had fallen off. But I had other spells off cooldown. It's always more DPS if you roll those spells first before you refresh your dot. You want to aim for your dot not falling off entirely, refreshing it in that 5-second pandemic window. But right there, it did fall off, but I had other spells first. A quick preemptive shield on myself before that mechanic. And yeah, I went ahead and paints up myself. The tank's not really going to need it here. And I was falling out of position. Paints up myself so I can have some wiggle room to walk in the lava. We have Schism available. Always want to refresh your dot before Schism. And now we have Boon available too. Ramping with some atonements. Ooh, yeah. So this felt so bad. I accidentally schismed that lesser mob instead of the boss. So that was a big sag. It was okay. And for that, I got selected with the hook, preemptively shielded myself, and walled. Didn't even hurt. And we only got one round of PI here, which I think is fine, because we're going into a bigger pull. And on this next poll, I have a new feature of my UI, another new feature of my UI, for the Unstable Rift cast, which is a one-shot for the whole group. It's something I can prevent with fear, so I've taken this weak aura that brings the Unstable Rift cast bar up big on my screen with a small audible, and you'll see here. So opening with all my dots, and there's the Unstable Rift. Someone else got that kick, so I'm in barrier, just getting all my dots out, hitting some explosives. We have a Shadow Fiend and Schism. Just mainly keeping my dots farmed here. Someone got that Unstable Rift as well. Always want to keep the spells on the tank. Farming dots primarily and getting explosives. And we do have Boon up. Since these guys will bolster as they start dying, I thought it was a good idea. Schism and Boon. And for this Unstable Rift, I saw no one was getting it, but by that point everyone was on cooldown, and that was my turn to fear, so I think I really saved the group there. Happy I got that on camera. But had to weave in fear between the Boon. Doesn't feel the best, but it saved a pull. And this isn't too bad. You just really got to keep an eye on those frontals. A quick defensive penance for the win for the rogue. And all we have here is Rapture. So I open with Radiance for the mastery buff, and I farm shields using my grid 2. And not every Rapture I think you need to use all 15 seconds. It is very expensive on your mana, so I just used a handful of globals just to cover that pulsar, and that was really all we need. And when it comes to grid 2 and monitoring your absorbs, I just think it's the most intuitive way to track them if they grow from left to right, just like your health. It makes it really easy to refresh depleted shields and monitor if it was a crit or regular, and just really keep up fat shields. So here we are coming up on last boss. We are Tyrannical, so it's really important you play your spells right. And this boss would have gone a lot smoother if we had been in comms. Because come to find out, the mage who was helping with the bombs did not know what he was doing. But it's okay. I have PI, waiting for the ads to come out. PI on the monk. When the ads come in, I penance to spread my dot. That's the only time I'll Divine Star. And getting ready for the first bomb. Atoning the whole group. Lead with some regular atonement healing. And here we are, Schism, Boon. Radiance at the very top just to be defensive. I tried to pop that thing and it didn't work. And then I ended up missing my eruptions. That was a rip. Group could have used it there. But so already I'm thinking ahead. With bigwigs, I'm really only tracking the collapsing star. I have everything disabled. We'll have the assassins too, but... So I'm thinking about my next star, which is Shadow Fiend. I'm kind of glancing at my spells. I don't want to use barrier yet, although maybe it would have been the better choice. You don't really have to double up on cooldowns for the bombs. I think one cooldown per, even on Tyrannical, is fine. And the better way to play a cooldown is by delaying it. So everyone's atoned. Here's my Shadow Fiend. And ouch. So if you ask me, the Mage was just a little bit quick to pop that mechanic, but we have a quick battle res, open with a Radiance to atone the group, straight into our Rapture. This helps with body and soul so we can position. We have 2 ticks of the bomb to cover and a jolt we're anticipating. So I'm rapturing the whole group, favoring myself last for the charitable soul. And on the outside of the jolt, we are fully covered with a Schism, Mind Games, and a Penance proc. And that was a full recovery. There is our PI on the monk. And I shielded myself just for the body and soul. When that mechanic's going out, a little mobility goes a long way to be defensive. So we have Boon here, atoning the group, Schism and Boon, Blast, Nova Nova Blast. And right here I work in my Radiance, just because the Mage was coming back towards us. And I would have preferred that last tick of the bomb to be managed, but I will give the Mage kind of a break there because it was so far away. I always use a shield right here. I'm noticing I don't shield too often. I think Renew is just fine, but in cases like that where you can get ahead of something, it's definitely not a bad idea to work that in. And that hurt. Monk down. Got a quick res from the Mage. And we're back in business. So glancing at my buffs, all we got is the barrier. So if I were the Mage, as soon as I see that barrier go down, I'm immediately thinking, okay, we have 10 seconds. That's the duration of barrier. And really just spamming flash heal on myself there. Do not want to get into the same situation as before with the death. Radiance. And I really wanted to top the group before this attack. I didn't want to Rapture because I don't have the mana. But the group having full health is all we needed. Shield so I could body and soul myself across. PI on the monk. And this is when I'm noticing we are just going to burn. So a cooldown dump. Shadow Fiend, Schism, Boon, Blast Nova with PI. And this is straight burn. I think my eruption landed, which is good. And boss down. So yeah, that was a pretty good 27 Gambit for 14 points. This is one of my favorite dungeons, and I really do pride myself on doing the last boss well. So kind of sad that I had a death and wasn't able to show you a perfect fight. But we were fighting for IO, and sometimes you gotta just get back up, put that behind you, and think on your feet. And instead, I think I caught a pretty good example of how to recover. Rapture being buffed right now is so nice. Definitely want to use Grid 2 as a Disc Priest to farm thick absorb values. It really helps you track those and maximize that spell, and it really helped us recover before that big jolt. But in conclusion, looking at the meters really quick, I've sniped pretty much all the orbs in the dungeons. That's exactly what you want to do. Way on the bottom for avoidable damage, and right at 10k for DPS, which are all really good metrics. So yeah, I'm really loving Disc Priest. Looking forward to Dragonflight. Not even bought the expansion yet though. But also, yeah, KUI for the win. I think that's a feature that's been out forever. I just didn't know about it. But the target helper and changing colors of orbs just really makes the biggest difference. I thought it was the best way to track them, by keeping their opacity at 100%. They really stand out, and I keep that nameplate glow on them as well, just to help see them. And the only other change I made was adding that cast bar for Unstable Rift. I felt since my fear ability is something that could save a group with that one cast, it was worth bringing it up on my screen bigger. So I found a weak aura that allows me to track casts. And as you saw in that one pull, I think my fear really came in handy because I was fully aware of that cast bar. So yeah, anyway, Discipline for the win, Kyrian for the win, and until next time guys, Disc out.